But we would split up duties. So we found we could manage that kind of group if one person was going to the next player and saying, "Okay, what are you going to do?" And then relaying that back.
That doesn't sound like any game I've ever played.
It went really fast.
How many of you out there are co-DMs, i.e. you share the DMing responsibilities with somebody else in the group?
2, 4, 10. More than Huh.
Statistically high.
I mean, what about hiatuses? Have you ever sort of said, I need 2 months off?
We took a hiatus when Dorian first had kids, and because both he and his wife played my game. So we said, okay, that's fine. We'll play Moons and Masterminds for 2 months or something like that to give people a chance. But other than that, I don't think we've ever taken a hiatus, nor have I really felt the need for one.
I think I've had a few months of a time when my work got very busy, but I've certainly never taken a voluntary, I'm getting tired of this. I think Kevin ran one game of mine about 12 years ago, one session, and when my wife and I went on our honeymoon, we found that while we were gone, my players got so antsy, even though it was only a month, that they broke into our house, got out my DM screen, and played a little impromptu session in my house and took pictures to prove that it was. You guys put a picture of me on the DM screen?
I'd love to see that police report. What did they steal? My soul.
To be fair, we restocked the refrigerator with fresh.
So, these long campaigns, and we dealt with sort of dealing with changes in players, dealing with changes in DMs. What about changes in rules? I mean, these are games that are crossing sometimes 2, 3
Rules. Who cares about rules?
I would hope you would, sir.
Yes, it's very important. Applying rules.
But I mean, in all seriousness, some of these campaigns at least must have made the bridge if they're D&D from 3rd to 3.5 to 4.
We went from 2nd to 3rd to 3.5 over the course of it. The transition actually wasn't that bad. I mean, we just took it slow. We got in fairly early on all the new additions and had time to think it over. I think my players got very tired of it after the 2nd transition, and when I mentioned the slightest possibility of switching to 4th edition, I think they started throwing things at me.
Good.
But it wasn't as bad as you might think. 2nd to 3rd, at least, it was similar enough in most ways because character classes and ideas translated very well. Multi-classing kind of took a hit in a strange way, so there was some slight rejigger, but it was just a small bump in the road, really.
So why make the shift? I mean, if you've already got a campaign running in 2nd edition, what was it that triggered you to say, I'm for the upgrade?
Because 3rd edition was cool.
Yeah, there was a big advantage, I think, and we were playtesting 3rd edition at the time. So we made the transition from 2nd to the early playtest rules of 3rd, so it would change a lot from game to day. My players, I had one player who, no joke, refigured their skills 9 times. That's a patient book. But for the most part, that really was a pretty painless switch. It wasn't that bad at all. I did make sure that because my players were high level at that point, when 4th edition came out, I ended the old campaign. It was ready, and started the new 4th edition campaign.
Our sim campaign underwent a really dramatic change because I originally started that with a homebrew system that I had built out of my memories of playing the Victory Games Spawn game,
Okay.
which I loved to pieces, but I couldn't find my original books, so I just kind of wrote a bunch of tables and I thought, that was good. It wasn't. And then the D20 thing happened, and I got pretty excited about that. And so I switched it over to Dungeons & Dragons, except without any spellcasting classes. And before you try and go through the Player's Handbook and figure out how many classes that leaves the fight of the thief. Yeah, it was a strange campaign.
Right, and that implies it was fairly rules light.
I guess, yeah. I wouldn't think that would. But like you guys said, the transition was actually quite smooth. Everybody was pretty good at bridging the gap between the representation of reality and then sort of the character and story piece. That was nobody really had any trouble with that.
I mean, we're all gentlemen in our. We're not teenagers anymore. I don't think any of us are in our 20s anymore. Do you feel like that what you want out of a game and and what your players want out of a game has changed a lot as we've all grown up and had families and kids and all that other stuff?
I'm finding myself moving away a little bit from the really tactically heavy fights, and that's partially because when I look at my strengths as a DM, really good tactical combat, not one. I do okay, but it's not I think what I'm best at. It's not what I necessarily am most fun at. So that probably isn't. That I stress that less now than I used to.
Chris, I'm curious on your answer on this one.
Well, I'm a leap year baby, so I'm actually only 10. So,
Explains a lot.
yeah, that does explain a lot, actually. I design my campaign based on what my players want. I ask them before I start what sort of things they want to get out of it, what they want to play. And I pretty much do the campaign for them. That's what gives me enjoyment. I can make the most out of anything that I throw at them, but it's really for them.
Do you think that what your